Welcome to the unforgiving wilderness of the Svalbard archipelago. An Arctic tern watches the waking giant as dawn breaks. The entire Arctic ecosystem relies on the delicate balance of ice. Yet, even an apex predator feels the biting winter chill. Every step this solitary male takes is a calculated risk. His world is quite literally melting away beneath his feet. A beluga whale breaches the dark, freezing waters before him. The vital sea ice is dangerously scarce this time of year. To survive the coming days, he has absolutely no choice. He must swim across the frigid ocean to find solid ground. The freezing water is a vast, draining physical barrier today. He conserves his fading energy with slow, highly deliberate strokes. The ambient temperature hovers brutally just below the freezing point. Every rest stop he finds is highly temporary and fragile.
His specialized hollow fur provides absolutely essential, life-saving thermal insulation.
He reaches the rocky coastal tundra, searching the desolate horizon. Other hardened residents fiercely cling to these sparse coastal fringes. He desperately seeks a marine mammal for his next meal. A successful hunt requires endless patience and absolute, perfect silence. One tiny mistake here could mean missing a vital meal. An ancient climate shift is drastically altering this familiar territory. Tiny scavengers quietly watch, hopelessly depending on his ultimate success. He has located an ancient, frozen seal breathing hole today. A faint, ghostly scent still lingers in the bitter air. The dim dawn fully fades into a punishing, gray morning. He slowly pushes forward across the dangerously fragile, shifting crust. This brutal, shattered labyrinth offers no clear path to safety. He forcefully leaps over the dark, freezing abyss below him. Every single jump consumes precious, utterly irreplaceable stores of energy. The morning brings absolutely no warmth to this frozen kingdom. A massive walrus colony heavily guards the distant frozen shoreline. These armored behemoths are far too large to tackle alone. He wisely chooses to avoid confronting the aggressive, lethal giants. He desperately needs smaller, more vulnerable prey to sustain himself. He endlessly searches for a vulnerable ringed seal hiding below. The surrounding ocean is entirely full of unreachable, taunting life. His massive muscles ache fiercely from the relentlessly brutal swim. A short rest is a dangerous but ultimately necessary luxury. Ancient predators constantly patrol the dark, freezing shadows directly below. The relentless march continues across the shifting, unstable winter terrain. He suddenly catches another incredibly faint, promising scent nearby. Sheer desperation violently fuels a sudden, massive burst of speed. He reaches the source of the scent on the ice flue. He must calculate every single movement perfectly to guarantee survival. He finds only a frozen, abandoned scrap left far behind.
It provides barely any meaningful biomass or vital caloric intake.
This massive expanse is currently a cruel reminder of famine. He abandons the useless scraps, forced to keep moving onward. The clock is constantly ticking in this unforgiving, melting kingdom. The harsh glare of the late morning punishes his weary eyes. Smaller creatures freeze entirely, avoiding the desperate attention of the giant. His natural circadian rhythm urges him to hunt, but exhaustion slows him. The internal furnace of his massive body demands immediate, massive fuel. Even the incredibly specialized grip of his paws sometimes fails him. He is forced back into the painfully freezing, energy-draining ocean. A massive bowhead whale surfaces, dwarfing the solitary, exhausted swimmer. These immense, floating monuments of ice are utterly beautiful and completely barren. The relentless cold rapidly strips away his remaining core body heat. He reaches temporary salvation, hauling his massive weight onto solid ice. Midday brings flat, unforgiving light across the barren, melting sea ice. His monumental stamina finally breaks under the crushing weight of starvation. He simply cannot push his starving body a single step further. His breathing becomes dangerously ragged, betraying his incredibly weakened physical state. He must sleep now, or risk complete, fatal organ failure today. For hours, the apex predator lies entirely motionless on the ice. A ringed seal surfaces briefly, while the polar bear rests nearby. A subtle shift in the wind abruptly shatters his deep slumber. He instantly switches into a highly focused, perfectly silent predatory mode. The unmistakable, rich scent of a marine mammal floods his senses.
Summer meltwater creates a treacherous, totally unpredictable labyrinth across the ice.
Rapidly, transforming solid ground into dangerously weak slush. Climate shift accelerates the dangerous melting of these vital frozen pathways. He forces his drained muscles to clear another treacherous, freezing gap. Every misstep aggressively drains his deeply depleted, rapidly fading energy reserves. He flattens his immense profile, transforming into a completely silent ghost. A massive bearded seal rests, totally oblivious to the approaching danger. One perfect strike will instantly reverse his devastating fortune right now. He explodes with terrifying speed, committing all his remaining vital energy.
The agile seal vanishes instantly, leaving him with absolutely nothing today.
This brutal failure pushes him dangerously close to the absolute edge. Every failed ambush burns precious calories he simply cannot replace easily. The crushing psychological weight of starvation perfectly matches the physical toll. His massive, powerful frame is steadily betraying him from the inside. He must somehow push onward, despite his rapidly deteriorating physical condition. The very ground he walks on is literally crumbling into the sea. Strange, ancient marine residents share these rapidly changing, deeply treacherous waters. The Arctic is entirely reshaping itself, violently breaking apart every single day. Swimming through this dangerous icy debris field drains him even faster. He hauls his immense biomass onto a precarious, highly unstable ice flue. Afternoon rapidly brings cooling air and an incredibly ominous, eerie calm. Opportunistic scavengers relentlessly shadow him, patiently waiting for a fatal collapse. He forcefully expels the freezing water to preserve his rapidly failing warmth. His staggering gait clearly reveals the immense, cumulative toll of the journey. Suddenly, a very distinct, incredibly promising scent rides the cooling afternoon wind. He climbs a towering pressure ridge to survey the vast, fractured horizon. From this elevated vantage point, he can finally map his ultimate destination. He spots a massive, stable expanse of thick ice far ahead. The unmistakable scent of thriving life pulls him aggressively toward the horizon. Driven by sheer desperation, he abandons safety for a final, massive push. The colossal skeleton of an ancient giant blocks his direct path. Even this massive polar bear is dwarfed by the sheer scale. This frozen graveyard stands as a stark monument to past ages. The shifting terrain traps him inside a claustrophobic, jagged, icy gauntlet. This brutal detour costs him significant time and he cannot afford today. Fatigue severely compromises his usually flawless, perfectly calculated physical balance. The relentless physical punishment forces another deeply involuntary, frustrating halt. He finally breaks free, emerging onto a vast, completely unobstructed plain. Smelling the ultimate destination, he taps into hidden, deep energy reserves. He moves with a singular, incredibly fierce determination across the wasteland. Absolutely nothing will slow his relentless, driving pace toward the Floe. The daylight begins to visibly wane across the vast, frozen archipelago. He is a biological machine, perfectly designed for endless, grueling endurance. Twilight violently steals the light, instantly plunging the temperature far below zero. The setting sun casts a long, lonely shadow across the freezing expanse. Nocturnal hunters awake, witnessing the final hours of his daily migration. He operates entirely on pure instinct, completely devoid of any remaining energy. He knows the massive, stable ice flue is finally drawing near. Another sudden scent demands absolute, perfect silence in the fading twilight. A vulnerable ringed seal rests dangerously close to the dark water. He perfectly masters his immense body, freezing mid-step to avoid detection. He brilliantly utilizes the subtle terrain to mask his dark features. He meticulously calculates the ultimate striking distance with terrifying, practiced precision. The hunt is completely aborted. A massive water channel blocks him. He must swim this treacherous, fast-flowing divide to reach stable ground. He fully commits to the incredibly dangerous, completely exhausting final crossing. This freezing, vast expanse demands absolutely everything he has left today. Powerful, unseen tidal currents constantly threaten to sweep him completely away. Exhaustion pulls heavily, threatening to drag the mighty giant completely under. The sheer scale of the Arctic Ocean is deeply, undeniably terrifying.
In the water, he is entirely outmatched by his aquatic prey. He refuses to drown here. Pure survival instinct violently takes over.
Through sheer grit, he finally approaches the massive, unbroken ice floe. This colossal platform holds the absolutely crucial promise of future hunts. Solid ground is a monumental victory for the exhausted, starving giant. He drags his immense weight out of the lethal, freezing abyss. The unbelievable physical toll of the brutal day finally overcomes him entirely. Even completely exhausted, a true apex predator simply refuses to yield. He violently shakes off the freezing ocean, instantly reclaiming his immense majesty. This vast, stable kingdom offers absolute safety and abundant hunting opportunities. A polar bear must relentlessly push through unimaginable hardship to survive. The hunt truly begins anew here, deeply anchored in this solid foundation. The grueling, devastating journey finally yields to this beautiful, vital destination. He reclaims his rightful place at the absolute pinnacle of this ecosystem. Tomorrow, this harsh, magnificent battle for survival begins all over again.